This is a brief demonstration of a database application that will assist St. Vincent de Paul conferences in overseeing their operations and meeting the Canadian annual reporting requirements. The database operates under Microsoft Access Runtime, either the 2016 version or the Office 365 version. This is free software that's available on the Microsoft.com website. You will require a computer with Windows 7 or better installed. Here at the Ottawa South Conference, we use three main modules from the database application: home visits, meetings, and other log entries. The prison visits and the summer camps we do not do, and while there is some functionality available here, it is not fully developed. The last item on this main screen is exceptions reports, which gives a report of areas where there may be deficiencies in the database or errors. And so you would want to run this report before you ran any other reports or relied on this dashboard here in making your decisions. So right now this dashboard shows a number of errors on it, and that's simply because we're starting out here with a completely blank database. As soon as we make our first entry, then this dashboard will be filled in. So let's enter our first home visit. So in this screen, we have first here a log number, which is set within the conference settings, so it can be changed. We have ours set so that the first two digits are the year, and then of course we start off with number 1 and go up from there. It's automatically incremented anytime a record is entered, any type of record. Now these, wherever you see a drop-down box like this, you can of course select from the drop-down box, which will give you whatever might be available there, or you can also just start typing and it will give you any match that shows up. Now, again, we have the date boxes, which are similar. And so let's just put in a date and let's put in a client. So let's say Archie Andrews has called up and he needs some food. Now you'll see as soon as I put in the name, because he's already in the database, information from the database, from his client record, shows up. So there's 2 adults and 3 children in the household. We don't have any support in the last 90 days, and telephone number, address, children's age in this case have been added in the notes. So let's say so he needs some food, and let's say we know who the volunteer will be. Let's just pick one here and give him someone to accompany him. So at this point we can save the record, and you have to save it before you decide to make a food voucher, but then you can create a food voucher, and this is what we get. So here would be your conference name. In this case it's a demo version. Archie Andrews, his name appears here, as does his address. And then we have the name of the volunteer and the accompanier, their first names and their last initials. Then down below, we have further details that were in the client record. So this printout can be folded in half, and it shows, the top part just shows the voucher that we get the client to sign, and of course the bottom part has the information for the volunteers. Now we can print the report, which what we do is print it to PDF and send it off to the volunteers, or even blast it out to several volunteers if we don't know who's actually going to be making the visit. And so let's say now that the visit has been done, so we put in date saved, And now we need an administrator. We need to put in the time. The administrator, we usually end up about a half hour of administration time between getting the call and arranging everything. And then the duration in hours for the visit. Now this is for the total visit. Most of ours are about a half hour. And that's per each volunteer. Now let me just save that as well, and let me just show you that if there were other transactions that Archie Andrews had, they would all show up here as well. So if there were 5 or 6 other ones, they would also show up in the Client Transactions tab. So let's save and close here. And now let's go to our dashboard, and I press F5 is a refresh. There we go. Sorry. And as you can see, so it refreshes. We now have 1 visit showing up. Oh, I forgot to put in the amount for the food in the record. So let's go back and do that. So next time we open up, we come to a fresh record. We can just click and go back here to the record we just put in. And let me put in, let's say we gave them $125 worth of food. And quite often in our conference from the various parishes, we have food that's been donated. So we often take a bag of food as well, and we just estimate what that is and put that into other support. So let's save and close that. And now we'll refresh once again. And now you can see the food, $125 shows up. The other 2 adults have been served, 3 kids. Total of 1 volunteer hour on the visit, and a half hour down below here on the by the administrator. So let's go ahead and enter some other home visits now. So let's do another assistance. And we can make this say 9th. I'm just going to go ahead and put in the full record. So let's say we visit the next day. And now in this case, as you'll see as I start typing, names show up that as long as it matches, it keeps putting in names. But as soon as I get to a name that's not in the database, then of course it blanks out. So let's say we have Jules Verne. Now, as soon as, because this is a new one, when I go to the next record, it brings up this message saying, do you want to create a new record? And of course, normally you do. So, and normally it would put in here, I'm just going to close this right now. Normally it would put in here the name already. In this case, it hasn't because it's a first time visit. So let's just try that again. And I believe this time it should drop the name in. Yes, there we go. So the name would normally be in there, and then you just add a phone number. And put in the address. In this case, I have set as a default Ottawa as a town. Now the revenue sources, this drop-down box is different from any other drop-down box simply because typing will not give you anything, and that's because it allows more than one entry of these default entries. One that quite often we hit, of course, is Ontario Works. So let's say in this case in the household, somebody also works part-time, brings in a bit of money that way. Let's say there's 2 adults and 2 kids. And we can just save and close that. We could, of course, put in the children's names if we wanted to, if we had them. We can, these records are quite extensive, the number of fields that could be put in. So now, as you can see at first, this shows up as there's an error there and there's nothing here. But as soon as I click away from the name box, then everything drops into place, same as with Archie Andrews. So let's say in this case, he wants furniture. So we're going to give him, I'm just going to say furniture. I'll just say dresser, table, etc. We could have a whole list of what he needs. And once again, we can save this. Oh, sorry. It's set that we need a volunteer name. Now in this case, I picked up a volunteer who doesn't have a police check, and so you get this warning sign here that there is no police check. Just another one of the features, since anybody making visits should have a police check normally. So let me save that, and we can do up a store voucher form. And this is different from the food voucher. It does pick up the name, address, telephone number, number of adults, number of children, but not the ages of the children, because we don't make a record of birth dates or anything like that of the kids. So it's up to the volunteer at the time of the visit to put in what the ages are. And so this is our Ottawa store voucher currently. And so it lists the different values of the different items so that you can estimate what it would cost. And it can also be printed and sent off to the volunteers. So let's go ahead and finish off. So we said 250. It's, again, we'll put in Peter Parker as administrator. He's a new one, so we'll just estimate that his time is 0.75 of admin time, a little more admin, and let's say same with the volunteers, a little more time than normal. And let's do save and new. And let's do a sick visit. And we'll just do again the same. You don't have to use the drop-down box. You can type in the dates. And let's just say Betty Boop. And Yell. And husband away. So in this case, the number of adults and children in the case of sick visits does not matter. It's only going to pick it up as a one-person visit having been assisted. And so usually it doesn't take much time. And for admin, and let's just drop in any old, and let's say 0.5 hours. Oh, sorry, no, I just want to delete that. Okay, and let's save another one. And let's make this one a friendly visit. And again, we can, so as I said, type in and let's make this Lola Bunny. And so let's say just separated friend. And so let's just say this. So we're going to change this to 1, although again, it wouldn't matter for a friend visit if we had 2 in there, because it only shows up as a one-person visit. But the reason I've changed that is that because she's now separated, her household now consists of 1 adult. So Let's see, who can I choose here? Anybody at all? Keep hitting the same people. And let's say 1.25 hours. And so let's save that. And new. And in this case, I get a message saying the number of adults entered is different from the client record. Do you want to update the client record? And in this case, we do, because she's separated, so there's now just her in their household. Now let's do another assistance. And again, and let's say it's Archie Andrews again. He phones up and again needs food. Sister visiting. So he needs more food. We had this happen at Christmas time where a household had something like this where we were giving more than normal. So in this case, we got sister, oh, I want to say sister visiting with 3 kids. I've got my cap lock on there. 3 kids. And so in this case, we're going to make it 3 adults and 6 kids. And so let's say we give them another $100 of food. And so we'll just finish off the record here. And so let's save that. We're not going to bother doing a food voucher. You've seen that. So let me just do another save and new. And in this case, it pops up saying the adults is different. But in this case, we don't want to update the client record because that's not the normal household. Same with the children. And let's finally do another sick visit. And let's see, Donald Duck. And get somebody up here. Let's see who else we can have. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Normally it would take a little longer on home visits, so let's make this 5 hours. And let's save and close that. And let's refresh our screen here. So I've created a little spreadsheet here with a summary of all our visits and what's happened. As you can see, there's 6 visits as listed here. There's $225 of food, which was $125 given to Archie on the first visit and another $100 on the second visit to Archie Andrews. And then we had $250 of store voucher that was given to Jules Verne, $15 of a grocery bag that was given to Archie Andrews on his first visit. Number of adults, 7 adults were assisted and 11 children. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. Total number of volunteer hours, as seen here, was 9.75 hours. And the volunteer hours was 2.5 volunteer hours. which, as you can see, matches what we have down here. Now, in the case of the dashboard, it picks up repeat visits, which of course is not kosher. The reason it does that is it would be too complicated to try and limit it to just to eliminate any duplicated visits within a period. So the dashboard counts everything, even if there's been a second visit to the same household as there was in this case. However, if we were to go to the annual report and look at the visits, we would see that in this case, it shows the number of homes visited as, sorry for the grayed out. That's just something that Access tends to do. So total number of volunteer hours, 12.25, which was the 9.75 and the 2.5 comes to 12.25. We have 2 homes visited, and so this doesn't count sick and friendly visits. This only counts assistant visits. So there were 2 homes visited, and that was Archie Andrews and Jules Verne. They were visited 3 times, Archie Andrews twice and Jules Verne once. Number of adults served, as you can see, is 5. And the number of children is 8. And that, of course, it picks up the largest number from the Archie Andrews. So there were 3 adults and 6 kids were the highest numbers out of those fields in a visit. So it picked up the 3 adults from Archie Andrews' second visit and the 2 adults from Jules Verne, so that's 5 adults, and it picked up 2 children from Jules Verne and 6 children from Archie Andrews' second visit for a total of 8 children served. So you can see that that's making the calculation properly for the annual report. Then we had 2 sick visits, and we had 1 friendly visit. So all of that's been picked up here on the annual report. And so let's just close that. And this shows you here the report dates. For the annual report, it always gets set for what has been set in the conference thing for what's the reporting year, and it does it on a calendar year basis. And but they can be changed to anything. The default is to go year to date, so start from January 1st and go to August the 11th. Now, in amongst, there are also a number of other reports which we can go over later, but just go back to the main menu here, and I just want to show you the membership as well, that we have the membership visit, and it lists all the different members that are there and what their positions are, and then it picks up who are active members and breaks down by the various categories and whatnot. So that's the home visits. The meeting module is pretty straightforward. You can, of course, set up a date, same as before. There are a number of different types of meetings that can be put in. One we use the most, of course, is regular. And so we often have somewhere around 6 or 8 people attending, and they usually take about an hour and a half. You can put in a link to a minute file and a link to an agenda file. And you can put in notes if you wish. So that's pretty straightforward. The other log entry is a very generic type of screen with a number of different ways of entering information. Of course, the date would be pretty standard just about anywhere. And of course, it has client name, and you can put in how many children and adults have been supported. If you have any sort of project that's different from normal, you can also, one of the most common things is to enter admin stuff. So like our friend Peter Parker, let's say, does his accounting for the month. And so then you have for admin a drop-down box, and you can put in what it's for. So another maybe common item would be, say, north of 60. packing the containers. And so quite often when you have more than one volunteer show up, then you can't just pick any. You could put up to 2 volunteers in if you had an event going that took more than that took only 2 volunteers. But if you have a larger event with a number of volunteers, then you could just use this to just capture the number of hours rather than breaking it down by individual. Of course, you could put more than one entry and list the individuals if it's that important to you that you have the hours by individual. So let's say another one is, let's put in a client name. And let's say spend $250 on materials because Boris Badenoff, one of his kids, needs a wheelchair ramp. Let's say we have people go out and help him out with that project. And of course we can put in some actual names. If there's only 2, go to help. And I guess it would normally be the same person. And it's not admin in this case, so we don't bother putting that in. There we go. Let's just save and close that. So let's update our screen and see what we've got. And here's our spreadsheet once again updated for the last bunch of entries that we made. As you can see, the top part remains unchanged from what it was previously because that has to do only with home visits. But as far as the remaining hours go, you can see that there is in total 35 hours here. It's not picking up the meetings here. That is an option I'm considering to put in, is to have it pick up the meeting hours, but right now I'm focused more on actual admin. And if we go to the annual report, you can see, get our spreadsheet up again, that we've got our 35 hours, which is the 25.25 of other hours, including the 12 hours of meetings, plus the 9.75 of visiting hours. So our top part here is unchanged other than the number of hours, the 35 hours. But if we go down below, we can see that under other types of assistance, we have our the Boris Badenoff family, that was 1 adult and 1 child were served. So as I mentioned earlier, on the main screen here with all our actions, before you run other reports or rely on the dashboard, you should go into the exceptions report. Just give you a quick overview of what it does. So for example, we gave out, we have it set for if it exceeds $100 of food vouchers, that it shows up in the reports. We have Archie Andrew, of course, that did that. If there's more than 3 hours on for a client, then it shows up as well. And we had that with Donald Duck, because we had basically 3.5 hours for Clark Kent and Bruce Banner each. And if there's less than 2 volunteers, of course, policy for St. Vincent de Paul is that there be 2 volunteers go on visits. So any visit that there was not an accompanier for the volunteer, they get listed here. If it took more than 3 days to fill a request, it's set here. Now that and the $100 I mentioned earlier can be set in the conference settings. We'll take a quick look at that later. So if there's no administrator or admin time on a record, then generally you usually should have one. If total volunteer hours on another log entry exceed 10 hours, then it gets flagged, as does anywhere if you have the other admin type. So if you put in an hours for a volunteer and you use other admin, then it should have a note to describe it. So if it's not there, then it gets flagged. And then if any of the meetings that have been recorded have no time recorded on them, that gets flagged as well. So that's the exceptions report. And I expect more things will get added to that over time. Under the maintenance tab here, we have, in addition to accessing the various tables, we have conference information where you can enter your address and whatnot, phone number, fax number, which can be used in reports and on the vouchers. You can set the report year, you can set the current year, you can set the record number. The report year is for the annual report, that's the only one it affects. And then in program settings, we have a number of different things here in the exception report of different limits that you can set. We also have whether you can force entry of a volunteer. You would probably want to uncheck this if you generally do not know who the volunteer is going to be when you're setting up an entry. The number of days of past support, so you could set this to whatever you want. I've just set it to 90 as a default. And whether you want to force the number of attendees and a meeting duration in the meetings when you enter a meeting, which if you're entering a meeting beforehand, before you know all the details and who all's there, if you start putting an entry in, you probably want to uncheck that as well. That concludes this demonstration of the St. Vincent de Paul logging app. If you're interested in exploring this further, I have both a blank demo, as I started with today, and a demo that has been populated with sample data that I could provide you to check out. Just email me at pat.ssvp.ottawasouth@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. I hope you have found this useful.